I just got three things to say. God bless our troops, God bless America, and gentlemen, start your engine!
Don't worry, garage music will always be there for you folks.
Yo, bringing the bashment vibe. UK Garage.
Welcome to the Stire Sound podcast with your hosts, Trey, Stire, and Jack Noel.
Ladies and gentlemen, episode 10 of the Stire Sound is here. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for listening. The final round of the AMA Pro Motocross Championship at Budds Creek Raceway wrapped up this weekend. Jet Lawrence had already secured his 450 Motocross Championship, and to really no one's surprise, Haiden Deegan scored his second straight 250 outdoor title. It was a fun weekend from Budds Creek. We'll get into that shortly. I am your host, Trey Stire. Thank you all for listening and for the support. You know where to find us. Share the love, spread the word. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, iHeart Radio. Back with me this week after missing episode 9 due to being a little bit under the weather. Jack is back. Jack Noel is here. Welcome back, man. Great to have you back aboard. And Budds Creek this weekend kind of went how everybody expected, but it was a fun race nonetheless. Welcome back.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to be back. I'm definitely feeling much better. I caught a pretty gnarly little sickness last week. I wasn't even able to go to Budds this past weekend. I was so sick, which luckily our boy Trey was there, and he was able to get the inside scoop from the races, which was cool. And yeah, man, I mean, it was I only watched I watched the motos obviously, but I wasn't like paying crazy close attention. But yeah, man, the racing this weekend was, I mean, pretty basic. It's the last round of the year. I think everybody's kind of tired and over it, and you can kind of see that. You can see the kind of last couple pushes to get some points from some guys. Guys are starting to get hurt a little bit. It seems like the bodies are starting to wear, and obviously Deegan was in the driver's seat to win that title in the 250 class, and then Jet had already wrapped up his, so there was not much on the line in the 450 class. But I think going into SMX, everything will be really, really interesting. I think it's a great way to clean the slate and kind of give some interest for this next month coming up. And yeah, it was a good racing at Budds. A couple cool little headlines, and we're getting into silly season too, man. I love hearing about where guys are going and where they could be and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll kind of let you go from there, Trey, and take it over.
I agree with several of those takes, especially silly season. I'm always a fan to see where everybody ends up. But as far as the reset goes, that's, I feel like, much needed for a lot of guys. And not only that, but it's easier for some of them probably to be a little bit more motivated when you have $1 million on the line, for example, in the 450 class. That's definitely got to get the ball rolling. But in terms of race recaps, not a ton to talk about, at least in the 450 class. Moto number 1. Jet Lawrence got out front right away, controlled the race. I know everybody in motocross complains nowadays how, we don't have creative nicknames anymore. I'm willing to suggest one for Mr. Jet Lawrence. Obviously, we call him the Jet, but wow, how original, you know. If we're going to give people nicknames and we want more creativity, then here is my solution. Jet Lawrence, the surgeon. Why do I say that? I say that because, I mean, just watching him ride in the first moto, you listen to episode 9, you heard Edward Heller talking about how he makes everything look so effortless and it makes you want to hop on a bike and just go out there and rip. I mean, the first moto, a lot of it, he was just managing the gap, keeping it about 5 seconds or so, but everything he did, it just looked so precise, so in rhythm. When he would come down the one downhill right before the big gulp, you would see pretty much every other rider's bike in the field, the suspension, I mean, obviously doing its job, but bouncing like crazy. And it seemed like Jet's bike was just really soft and plush and able to soak everything up. And just watching his riding style, it's poetry in motion. I feel like it's surgical, like, because he's so precise And not only that, but usually so great under pressure. I think back to his perfect season when Chase Sexton was breathing down his neck in the final moto, and some people might have cracked under that pressure. Some people might have thrown it away, might have made a mistake, but Jet stayed right there, held off the pressure, and became the third guy to ever secure a perfect season. Then later that year with the playoffs, he came down to a winner-take-all showdown with Ken Roczen for $1 million. Same way last fall, you think about with his brother. I mean, he's been in so many high-pressure situations, and usually it doesn't seem to phase him a bit. And you think of major surgeons, and they're like that all the time. He's just so precise and so fun to watch. But then in the second moto, it was HJ's time to shine. Hunter Lawrence with a great moto victory. He got out front, ripped the whole shot, and he was on cruise control. I know Jet was just kind of being calm, being conservative, kind of riding it in. I mean, you could tell he was definitely trying still, but he wasn't sending everything like crazy, especially knowing who was in the first position. It was also hilarious. I wish I would have been recording the very end of the moto. I got Hunter crossing the line, but I unfortunately didn't get Jet Lawrence doing his best Ronnie Mack impersonation and doing a nose wheelie or whatever you'd like to call that over the finish line. The performances from the Lawrence brothers, not just on Saturday, but throughout the year, allowed Honda to win the Manufacturers' Cup. I know that brand is incredibly stoked. Of course, a lot of great performances in the 250 division as well. Chance Hymas, before he got hurt, he won Thunder Valley. Then Joe Shimoda came on strong at the end of the year, was ripping off wins, ripping off podiums like crazy. Speaking of the 250 class, it was a wild day. Lots of red flags, lots of restarts, some penalties, some chaos. But at the end, everything was kind of the same because you have Haiden Deegan, your now two-time 250 motocross champion, and Haiden Deegan now 4 consecutive championships dating back to his outdoor title last year, of course, SMX last year, and then 250 West Supercross. Deegan on a roll. He crossed the finish line first in the first moto, but he jumped one of the jumps as the red flag came out for Cole Pranger. Speedy recovery for the Canadian. He went down, I believe, broken femur was the diagnosis for him. He just finished up the Canadian Championship, came down on a visit, and unfortunately got hurt in the first moto. There was a few more guys with penalties. Joe Shimoda finished second, but he also received a one-spot penalty, which meant that Cole Davies, in his second pro motocross race, gets his first career moto win. Davies had a really strong ride, but his stat line right now is kind of unbelievable. His first 4 motos as a pro outdoors, 23, 23, 117. It's kind of astonishing to look at. When he's gotten a good start, the one moto he's got a good start. He's ripped. He stayed up there. He lost touch a little bit with Deegan and Shimoda, but none of the Pro Circuit Kawasaki guys could really close on him. Nobody was gaining ground on him. Davies was really cruising in third. He held on to Deegan and Shimoda for a while. And second race back, especially for a rookie, it's an incredible sign. Of course, he inherited the moto win. I'm sure he probably doesn't feel like he won, but it was still a great showing. And then second moto, he gets a poor start and just wasn't really able to work his way through the pack a ton. Levi Kitchen finally back on the podium with a 4-3 day, a much-needed shot in momentum for Kitchen. I'll send it over to you, Jack, before I get into my observations, but another championship for Haiden Deegan. We expected this. We expected him to dominate during the outdoor season. You said there was a little bit of cracks in the armor after Redbud. It wasn't necessarily the same, but because he had performed so well in the opening races of the season, and he said in a press day interview with myself and with TransWorld Motocross, he's like, yeah, I went out there and I smoked him at the beginning of the season, and I kind of earned the right to be able to ride it in a little bit and to be a little bit more conservative. But congratulations to Deegan and the Star Yamaha team. And now everybody has their eyes set for the future Deegan versus Lawrence rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, when you ride that good and open up that big of a points gap, within the first 5 rounds, it is pretty darn easy to go out and say, like, I don't have to try as hard as I necessarily need to win this title. And I mean, he's not riding balls to the wall all the time. And obviously Thunder Valley, we saw he had to kind of like nurse his biking home. And I think the first couple rounds, he for sure was just, as much as he could and all out. And then I think once he got beat by Hymas, the dynamic kind of switched a little bit. I mean, he was still really good at High Point. I think he won both motos at High Point, right?
Yes, sir. Dominated at High Point. That was really the turning point, in my opinion, at least, because Shimoda went 6-6 or something that day. Joe was really fast, but he went down a couple times and just lost so much time, and Deegan was cruising out front both motos.
Yeah, so like High Point, like after High Point, right? Like he kind of was like, okay, like I'm in the driver's seat. Like I have, Hymas is out at this point. You have a 30-point gap to second. I mean, it's pretty hard to choke that, right? I mean, if everything goes smoothly and you don't finish outside the top 5 for the rest of the year, you should be okay, right? If you're able to win and perform like you can on certain weekends. And I think that's what he knew. Like, it would be hard for him to finish off the podium if he was riding at even, at 80%, right? So I'm excited more or less for Deegan to kind of leave the 250 class. I think it'll be more of an open book. I think Supercross is still very open, even with him being a defending champion. I think he's very beatable in Supercross. Outdoors, I don't think anybody has anything for him. I think Shimoda after Red Bud, if we would have started the season at Red Bud, it's a different story. But Shimoda just kind of came on too late, I think, and it sucks. And then I think too, like, you look at, like, once he's gone, Shimoda's in the driver's seat. A healthy Hymas is scary. I mean, a healthy Levi Kitchen is scary. There's a lot of guys that are really good at outdoors that kind of got overlooked this year because of how good Deegan was, and then Shimoda obviously being the only guy to really compete with him. So it definitely makes me look forward to outdoors in the 250 class next year. I think it'll be more interesting, just with not having that guy who, like, how it was whenever Jet left, we all knew Hunter was going to dominate, and that's what happened. So, and that's the same thing and now we don't really know who's gonna be that guy. Maybe it's Joe and it sucks again, and Joe's that new Deegan, and it's like Joe's the guy to dominate every weekend. But hopefully there's a little bit more openness to it, and I think there should be at least. And but yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing just how the whole 250 class develops and how everything like that goes. And then even like you look at like Cole Davies and like Dudney and Landon Gibson, 3 very different riders. Like Davies obviously has a little bit more experience than Dudney and Gibson, but Davies, for me, for him to go out there and compete and get third in a moto, like, that's scary. I mean, the kid's 17 years old, and obviously, like, his focus was Supercross. Let's figure out Supercross, and then we'll have outdoors come later. If outdoors is already starting to come to him like this, I mean, imagine what a healthy Cole Davies is like too, and I think that'll be that's scary to me, right? I think Davies is really going to be the next guy to Deegan. I mean, the next guy in the 250 class is like a superstar coming into the 450 class, right? We had Chase coming out of the 250 class. We had Jet coming out of the 250 class. We had Hunter now coming out of the 250 class. And then you have other guys move up like Jay Coop and stuff like that, but they don't have like that superstar persona. I think Cole Davies, and I think he's going to be on the podium a lot next year in outdoors. Don't know if he wins the title or not, but will be very close. But I think he gets Supercross title done. I think within 3 years he wins an outdoor title and is a superstar going in the 450 class. But then talk about the 2 rookies, Dudney and Gibson. It's tough, man. I mean, Dudney had a really good showing. He scored a lot of points and was inside the top 20 on all 4 of his motos. Gibson, obviously, different story. Had a really tough showing at Unadilla. And I talked to him a little bit before the LCQ, and I'm just like, dude, like, nobody's going to give you an inch. It doesn't matter who you think you are. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, all these guys are good on the dirt bike from, outside the top 20 even. From there to 50th, they're all about the same in speed. Like, there's maybe 2 seconds between those guys. There's not a whole lot of separation. And it's super, super tough, like, it's it's not easy, and it's one of those things where it was a bummer to see him kind of not make the motos. I think he should have. Like in the LCQ, he crashed. Like inside when he was inside the top four, crashed twice. Kind of maybe let the pressure get to him a little bit. And but yeah, man, that's definitely a weird spot to be in as a rookie on a factory team where you should be realistically making these motos no problem, and you find yourself in the LCQ. Definitely an interesting first pro outdoor for a guy like him. And then Dudney, I mean, I already said he guys scored a lot of points, prove that he has the speed to compete. And I think this outdoor season, when you look outside the top two of Shimoda and Deegan, I think anybody from 20 to third could really change every weekend. Just on how healthy everybody was. It was pretty crazy to see. You see Nate Thrasher getting 19th overall in motos. It's like, what the heck? And it's just crazy to me. So I'm excited to see the 250 class move away from the whole Deegan thing, and to have him go do his 450 thing. And I think it really opens the 250 class up to be kind of anyone's game, and hopefully we find the next superstar.
Piggybacking off of that a little bit, you talk about Nate Thrasher, and then he puts in like 8.5 or something like that this weekend. I mean, he struggled at times, but then he goes out the last couple rounds and really proves once again, it's like, oh, he can be top 10, top 5 level guy. Obviously more of a supercross guy, but again, the parity and the constant revolving door of the 250 class always makes it interesting. We've had 3 guys who've won back-to-back 250 outdoor titles since 2010, and 2 of them have been within the last 5 years. Jet won 21 and 22. Then Hunter had his title in between Jet and Deegan. So we've had those dominant guys for several years, and it really hasn't been a bunch of parity in a while. But you look back, like 2016 through 2020 or so, Webb won a title. Osborne got a title. AP got a title. Sansarulo got a title. Then Ferrandis got his. I mean, there was a lot of parity, and even you go back a little bit before that, when you had guys like Kennard winning, Dean Wilson, Blake Baggett, Tomac won, and then Jeremy Martin came in. But the 250 class is always the proving ground, the revolving door of talent, and of course the elite superstars go up and go on to win 450 titles. But next year should be very interesting in both classes. Of course, I know everybody wants to see Jet versus Haiden, but in the 250 class as well. Now I'm going to get into my observations a little bit from Budds Creek. Obviously, unfortunately, Jack wasn't able to be there, but I was there. I was in the stands. I was out among the crowd watching, taking in the action, seeing what was going on. You mentioned Justin Cooper really quick. Shout out to him for being on the podium, ending the year. And not only that, but the number 1 seed going into the playoffs. Next week, we'll talk a little bit more about the playoff seeding and about who could be in the LCQs as we figure out more. I had a great conversation with Marshall Welton this weekend. We were brainstorming some of that. So I'll use that as a base a lot for next week. But Justin Cooper, a really great ride. I asked him in the press conference. He went 2-4, but man, that first moto, RJ was breathing down his neck pretty much 20, 25 minutes right there. The gap stayed about the same. And it was only when Hunter Lawrence broke the 2 of them apart that Cooper was able to get a little bit of breathing room and find a rhythm. RJ, another good ride. I know he was just off the overall podium, but RJ really had a great rookie season. As I've mentioned before on the podcast, I would have probably thought that maybe 5th place was his ceiling. But for him to get an overall podium a couple weeks ago and to be in that 3 to 4 range at the end of the year was a great sign for him. So congratulations to RJ on a really good outdoor year. Speaking of guys who were seemingly locked together, magnetized, Justin Barcia and Malcolm Stewart were the same way in the first moto. Mookie got past Barcia the first couple laps, and then it seemed like it was the same exact gap for the entire race, even when the 2 of them passed Jorge Prado. More on Jorge Prado in a few minutes, which should be a fun conversation, but Mookie was running his steady pace, and Barcia, you could tell he was trying to get there, but he just couldn't really gain any ground. And then things flip around in the second moto, and Barcia was up in the top 5 battling. He battled with RJ for a while. Some really good racing there. Tomac, 8th overall. He was all right in the first moto. He got around Prado. He was there behind Hunter, but He couldn't gain ground on the top guys, and then second moto, terrible start. He was probably around 25th on the opening laps. And then you had an absolute classic, where's this on my bingo card moments, where Eli Tomac and Kyle Webster were fighting to the death for 8th place. Shout out to Kyle Webster for putting in a great ride, but man, those two were going at it. And it's like, is Tomac really going to be able to get this guy? And you start thinking about Motocross of Nations and thinking, oh no, this is not good. But Tomac, not a great second moto, which once again, there are questions for Motocross of Nations. We'll obviously talk more about it in the coming weeks. Going on down the list, congratulations to Valentin Guillot for qualifying for the playoffs on his Rock River Yamaha, a guy who started the year as a true privateer in MXGP. He was just going to come over to America for a couple races, ended up being the full summer, and he is in the playoffs. I ran into Valentin after the motos, and man, he was so stoked, smiling from ear to ear. He's like, this summer has been so much fun. I can't wait. We were only supposed to do this for a couple weeks, and now we get to race for $1 million. He was absolutely over the moon. And I heard rumblings this weekend. We'll see how true this ends up. But considering the two people I heard this from were possibly the two most reliable sources in the pits and two guys who usually report a bunch of solid information, whether this comes to fruition or not, I heard rumblings of a possibility that Valentin Guillot might be on a factory bike in the playoffs. Obviously, it's hard to tell what really happens, but there is a slight chance that Guillot ends up on greener pastures during the playoffs, if you catch my drift a little bit. And speaking of green, guess who he beat in the overall results? His old MXGP buddy, Jorge Prado. Once again, we'll get into more Prado talk in a few minutes, but he certainly gave us a lot of headlines this summer, let's say. And going on down the list, Harry Koulis rebounded. He was a little under the weather at Unadilla. He was top 15 overall. Lorenzo Locurcio had a good day after I thought things were going to go badly wrong. He pushed his bike off the track during qualifying, the Q1, and I'm like, man, this is not good. But he comes back for 15, 16 scores. Mitchell Harrison qualified for the playoffs. Unfortunately, he had some kind of issue that took him out of the second moto. He went down in the rollers, got back on his bike, but pulled off the track. Something was wrong mechanically. Another guy I talked to this weekend was John Short. I walked up to John on Friday. I said, hey, man, I said, all you got to do is go 19-19, and you can steal a national number. He's like, thanks, man. I didn't know that. Well, he exceeded my expectations, and he goes 19-14, and according to my calculations, John should be repping number 90 next season. Fantastic performance from him to end out the year, and getting back into the national numbers, I'm sure has to feel good. Of course, John's been racing for a decade or so. He's always been a really solid privateer guy. A great weekend for him. Marshall Welton had a great second moto. Then you look further on down the list. I think the feel-good story of the weekend, when you look at the 450 class, would be Jack Rogers. J-Rock, what a performance in the first moto. He came around the first corner and was running third, fourth. He was fourth for the first couple laps. And I talked about when I was at High Point what I thought was the biggest crowd noise of the weekend, and that was when Aaron Plessinger took the lead. But at Budds Creek, those opening 450 motos, and they saw the opening laps, they saw the 351 right up there with the factory guys. The crowd was going nuts. The horns were going crazy. He scored his first career 450 points. I know he started to run out of steam a little bit toward the end, but I can't fathom how much adrenaline he had to have, not just running up front anywhere, but at his home race in front of all of his family and friends, and the people were going absolutely nuts every time he passed, and it was really cool to see. Second moto wasn't as good, but for him to go out there, it was a good year for Jack. He qualified for his first couple main events as a pro, and then he gets his first 450 points at the end of the year at his home track. And really quick, I'll touch on a few 250 guys. Cole Davies, as we mentioned, was rock solid that first moto. Of course, he inherited the win after the penalties. Dylan Schwartz, It was another very Garrett Marchbanks and Dylan Schwartz day. They started in about 67th place, and they rode up to the top 10. What a surprise, once again. You look at a little bit further down the results. Landon Gibson got his first pro points. Jack mentioned about Unadilla how it was a terrible round, but Landon recovered after the first moto in Buds where he didn't have a great showing and then to the top 15. Stav Orland and Dalton Vinner, the Bar Aviation Yamaha team, finishing out their season, both scoring points. It was Vinner's first points of his career. They went 18th and 20th, respectively. Huge for those guys. Also huge, Hayes Edwards is a pretty new face, and he scored the final point of the year. 21st in the second moto, but Hayes, he turned pro at Thunder Valley in June, and to conclude his first summer with a professional point, he's got to be stoked for that. Congratulations to him. And then my last observation that I will share is it was a very destructive weekend. There was a lot of major crashes, big get-offs, a lot of carnage this weekend, unfortunately. I stood at the bottom of Henry Hill for the first 450B session, which was the first session of the day. And I knew when I saw Corey Karsten go over the bars and get up limping, I'm like, well, this might set the tone for the day. And unfortunately, it did. I also had a front row seat to CJ Bernard's crash that brought out the red flag in 250A session 2. Holy crap, that was gnarly. Other than watching Brock Schmelian fly off the giant triple at High Point 10 years ago, it's easily the gnarliest crash I've seen. There was a little divot, a little kicker, something formed in the face of Big Gulp, and Bernard hits it, pitches the front end over, you hear panic, and then his bike just face plants into the jump. He lands between the second and third jump very hard. The bike flips off the side of the hill. I was talking with Ryder Yeckley, one of the up-and-coming photographers. He went up there, tried to get a look, and he's like, dude, you can hear him screaming in pain. It's not good. They put CJ on one of the little backboard things, carted him away. I believe it is some kind of hip injury, and then I heard also possibly a broken sternum for CJ. Another guy that was just finishing up his rookie season. So best wishes to him. Thoughts and prayers with CJ. It was a gnarly crash. And then Dylan Wright apparently went down hard. I was unable to catch it. Cole Pranger brought out the red flag in Moto 1. Juju, of course, had his crash where he clipped Parker Ross's back wheel, hit the ground hard. Benoit Patrell had a rough one at the end of Moto 2. Masiangelo crashed pretty hard in the rollers. Carson Mainquist had a hard get off. Jace Kessler had a rough one. Russell Bucheri. Cody Schock tried to have a rough crash. There were 3 times where he tried to wad himself really bad in the second moto, but fate intervened, I guess. But those were some of my observations from Budds Creek. And I talked about it a little bit earlier. Jorge Prado, we talked about him episode 1. We talked about like what is happening with the guy. There's been a couple good races, a lot of not great races. He shows up, apparently didn't really decide to try all that hard in qualifying and goes out there 43rd, I think it was, in qualifying. And we saw a rule that we haven't seen in, man, the last time I remembered, at least in the 450 class, was Toronto 2014 when Ryan Villapoto was in the hospital with food poisoning. He missed practice and qualifying. He missed all of that stuff, but they seeded him into the night show because he was the defending champion and the points leader at the time, and they put him into the show. But Prado, he goes out, he gets far outside. He's not even on a gate. He's like in the grass almost. Almost rips a whole shot, and it's like, wow, it's the Jorge Prado of old with the great start. And then after 2 laps or so, he got passed by Eli Tomac for 5th, and George showed back up, and he just started fading, and Barsha got him, and Malcolm got him, and Mitchell Harrison eventually got him. If Gio would have had one more lap, he would have blew his doors off. And then second moto, he's just out there rolling around. And you saw the social media posts. Well, I think most people saw the social media post before it got deleted. Basically, we're a small podcast. Hopefully we don't get in trouble from Kawasaki, but we'll give you the brief details at least. Jorge was basically saying, I didn't ride like myself. I was uncomfortable. I didn't get to go at 100%. And I think it was one of the Kawasaki engine guys basically saying, dude, I've worked for the team like 35 years and I've never seen anyone give up like you. We've talked about it all summer. Everybody's talked about it all summer. It's one of the hot button topics. You have a multiple time MXGP world champion, a man with undeniable talent, and then he comes over here and it's not like it was just disappointing, but you could see the effort. I could visibly see in Moto 1, like after he got passed by Tomac, and you can hear the throttle rhythm. It's like, okay, like I'm just going to put around here. And he talked about being uncomfortable, but man, Jorge Prado stocks went from being way up and people being excited about him coming over here to America to probably everybody who would own a Jorge Prado stock would be trying to sell it like an Enron stock in 2001 right now because, man, it got ugly. And rumors are he could potentially be heading back to the orange brand next year. But after the way this year went, is not good, and he desperately needs some good PR and some good momentum to come his way after all of the chaos and the struggles and all of the other stuff, the media distractions, the circus that was the 2025 outdoor season. And if he does call it with Kawasaki, this is going to go down, in my opinion, with Jeremy McGrath to Suzuki, and I can't think of other kind of team change snafus that went really poorly, but it's going to go up there as one of the worst matches in Supercross history and motocross history.
Yeah, I mean the whole Prada situation is it's pretty unprofessional. Like just from not really Kawasaki. I think Kawasaki did everything they could. I mean, yeah, you don't gel with the bike, and yeah, sometimes you go in a direction that's just worse than what you have, and it's tough. It can be really tough to develop and to you know set up a bike for something you've never set up a bike for in your life, Supercross, and then you have outdoors, which obviously is a little bit. It's just different than what he's used to. I think it's just not at all anything he's ever felt before. It's all new for him, and I think that's kind of another thing that can be a big challenge, right? When you come from, it's not just like you're riding new tracks, you're riding with new people around you, but like the bike and everything that he's got is brand new, top to bottom, even the gears new, like just weird stuff like that you don't even think about that like could have a thing or cause a problem or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just so everything is brand new. Like and anybody's doing anything new, it takes a minute to figure out how it works, how everybody on the team operates, and how the bike operates. And it's just it doesn't seem like there's any sort of like there was no patience from Prado. Like I think he thinks, I mean, and I'm not saying that he isn't this good, but like I think he thinks that he's the best rider in the world. Like without a doubt, I think he thinks that he's better than Jet. I think he thinks he's better than Chase, better than Hunter. When it's like realistically speaking, like I don't think on Prado's best day, and if Jet, Chase, and Hunter on their best day, Prado's getting fourth. I hate to say it, but he's getting fourth. And he's just one of those guys where I think he'd be maybe he would sniff the podium, maybe, but like I said earlier this year, like he doesn't sniff the podium this year. Like he doesn't have enough time and whatever to figure it out. But that's just where I think it's difficult for anybody to look inside and know what's going on unless you were there. And does seem like he is giving up, and it is sad to see. Don't get me wrong, and it's definitely one of those things where it's like, why, and what are we doing? And it doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. I think he kind of gave up too early. I think he doesn't want to listen to anybody but himself, and I think you can't change a hard-headed individual like that. And when somebody thinks they know best, and they kind of have their ways set, it's hard to change their mind. And I mean, I think it kind of has been that way since probably after South. Like I think Ironman was probably the last run where he tried, but to deliberately try not to qualify for a race, which is obviously what he did, like to go out there and qualify 43rd because you don't want to race, like that's just disrespectful. And if I'm Cowie, I don't stand for that, and I would fire him. So there's like another issue on why that didn't happen, but at the same time, it's like if I'm Cowie, I want to get rid of him too, and obviously he doesn't like what's going on at Kawasaki. So maybe he goes over to KTM and things are different, but at the same time, like there has to be a reality check for Prado to improve at all, and the reality of it is that he's not the best rider in the world right now, and that needs to check basically in his head for it. I think him to have any sort of chance of succeeding here in the United States.
I made a joke based off of this. I agree with the unprofessional takes. I mean, there have been plenty of people over the years that have said, oh, I didn't like this bike in retrospect, or I didn't like this team change, like it was a mistake. But for some of the things he said in the post, and obviously he had to edit it, the engine guy had to delete his comment or whatever, but there's a point, and I'm sure he's frustrated. I'm sure if he's used to winning and winning and winning, and now all of a sudden he's not, it's got to be incredibly frustrating. I know how competitive I am in video games and stuff, for example. Like, I absolutely hate losing, man. And for him to go from world champion and feeling like the best guy to being sixth, it's got to be demoralizing. But at the same time, the formats are different, the bike is different, but you can't trash people and throw them under the bus when they are working diligently, when they're working so hard to give you everything. They are trying so hard. I know they were talking about they were trying things with the motor and they were trying other things. Those people at Kawasaki have been grinding all year to try to help him get more comfortable, to help him adapt, to help him improve. And it seems like he was ungrateful for all of that. And it's a shame. And I made the joke, I was like, I'm surprised they don't yank him off that bike right now. And this was before the Jack Rogers really good moto happened. But I'm like, I would put Jack Rogers on that bike just for fun if I'm Kawasaki. Like, hey, you're a Maryland guy, just throw him on that bike. And I mean, Rogers comes out and rips the start and does really well. But I am shocked as well that Prado didn't get a pink slip at Budds Creek. And just, I also made a joke. I was like, I'm surprised they haven't bought him a one-way flight back to Europe yet, because those guys have to be so fed up and so angry with what's going on. And another part of Prado's problem, in my opinion, is he's not used to anything but the best bike. And I feel like we need to take that into consideration as well, because you look at MXGP, and for those who might not be as familiar with the series and might not keep up with it all the time, the KTMs and then the other KTM-related brands, of course, Jorge was on the Gas a couple years ago. And, of course, they have Husqvarna over there. He didn't race any of those, but the KTM family of bikes over there seem to be by far and away the best bikes. You look at their success, whether it was Cairoli winning championships or Hurlings, Prado has won championships, Lucas Coonan is in his rookie year and performing incredibly well. We know in the MX2 division, those bikes are on an insanely high level compared to everything else. And you see a ton of KTMs, where over here that would be Star Yamaha, or even you look through the rest of the 250 class, you see like Bar X bikes, Rock River bikes, Club MX bikes, in Supercross, Team Solitaire. But those KTMs and the KTM family bikes in Europe are usually the best of the best, the cream of the crop, like Star Yamaha, or maybe even Honda in the 450 class would
Well,
be here. But
sorry to cut you off, Trey, but like in the GPs, you don't have to fit an OEM standard. So like you can tweak the frame and
yeah,
you can tweak
great
anything
point.
you want over there compared to over here where the stock, it like basically has to be a bike off the showroom floor. Like the
Yep.
frame has to be, fit the frame like of any other KTM in the United States, basically. I want to say that's kind of like a simple rundown of the rule, but in Europe, you don't have to do that. You can tweak the frame to make the bike feel differently and stuff like that. So it's definitely an interesting thing. But yeah, go ahead with your point, Trey.
You can definitely over there, and that's an advantage to those guys racing over there. Like, oh, I want this frame for a sandy track. Oh, I want this different setup. different completely everything for a hard pack track. And then everything over here, you have a really good point there, but I feel very strongly that the KTM group over there, you look at their success and their track record, and really apart from Tim Geiser, nobody has been able to consistently knock them off the top spot in either class for the last decade or so. The KTM group has ran the MXGP series in terms of wins and podiums and trophies. And to be frank, Jorge turned pro 15, 16 years old and was always on a KTM or gas from that point. He was used to that same manufacturer, that same style. Obviously, we mentioned, he switched to gas, but basically a red KTM. We always get that analogy with Husqvarna, how it's the white KTM or something like that. But he was so used to the best performing manufacturer for so long, and then to come over here, and this is not an insult to Kawasaki, but they really haven't, Kawasaki as a group have not been on top since the early 2010s when Pro Circuit was starting to taper off their dominant reign. And then, of course, Villapoto had his insane run at the top of the 450 class. But really, since then, things have changed. KTM had a little bit of time in the sun over in the 450 class when you had a guy like Dungey. Roczen won a title for them. Musquin won a ton of races for them. And then things switched a little bit. Tomac had great years on the Kawasaki, but they still didn't really feel like the dominant brand that they once were. And then, of course, you move on down the line where Star Yamaha, and now with the Lawrence brothers on Honda, Kawasaki has still had a lot of success. You think back a couple years ago when Jason Anderson hopped on board, won all those Supercross races, and finally won an outdoor title. It's not like Kawasaki's a bad bike. And then you look at MXGP, what bike is leading the championship? A Kawasaki. The irony that Prado left the championship, and what is now leading? It's a green bike. It's hilarious sometimes how punchlines write themselves. I hope for the Kawasaki brand and for those people who have worked so hard, so diligently throughout the year, I hope that they're able to find another rider if they indeed part ways with Prado, to find another rider that is willing to work, willing to put the time in, because I can't imagine how frustrating it is for those men and women to show up to the shop every day or to the test track every day to grind and to put your blood, sweat, and tears into something that somebody just decides to qualify 43rd on. It's got to be absolutely demoralizing to those workers. Before we get into our interview segment, I will story of the weekend, sort of, from my point of view. We may make this a segment if I keep going to more races, and maybe Jack can share his sometime in the future about just a funny thing from the weekend. My story of the week from Buds is definitely the absolute unhinged chaos of the press conference. Man, oh man, was that hilarious and funny to watch. This was my third race of the year. I went to all the press conferences, of course now representing TransWorld Motocross. But for those who don't know and don't pay attention to the press conferences, that don't watch them regularly, they usually have a really simple format. One class comes in, it's the podium guys, they set up there, answer questions, then they leave, and the next class comes up. And then sometimes, like in Supercross when I was at Pittsburgh, they had the SMX Next guys on, so they brought them up, asked some questions. You know, standard proceedings. Seems very simple. Saturday was not simple at all. I get done writing my recaps and stuff, getting ready for them to be published, and nobody's there. Nobody for the podium or for the press conference is really there. I go over, I take my seat, and then poor Taryn Robinson's running around like a mad woman trying to figure everything out. And she just walks up to me. She's like, "You can go sit back down where your stuff is." She's like, "This isn't starting anytime soon." And I'm like, "Really?" Because it felt like, I know we had the delay for the red flags, but man, it felt like there ought to be someone. But you had Honda and Star Yamaha who it was their last day of school, so they were taking all these trophy pictures and all this other stuff by the podium. It was picture day, I guess. Congratulations on their success, but man, it really threw a monkey wrench into the press conferences. We finally got people in there, and when I say people, I mean Justin Cooper sat by himself at the desk, and then it's like, well, we got to start. So Justin Cooper is literally the only person in the press conference for the first 10, 15 minutes. Then Hunter Lawrence comes in, and he's the only guy. And it's like, this is really strange. If we have one person the entire time, we're going to be here all night. Then we get two people. Levi and Joe come in, and Miss Rita hands them popsicles for their great season. And then Joe casually drops MFer in the middle of the press conference when he's asked about what Haiden Deegan said to him. You had the champions come in a little later. Haiden Deegan sets down. He's like, who wants to sit next to the king? And then up walks Jet Lawrence, who plops right down beside him. I mean, it was just unhinged, the press conference. And it was fun for me as a journalist trying to work my way up in the sport. But man, I felt so bad for Taryn in that situation because she's got to try to keep things under control, but literally no one's there to be found. And then people start randomly showing up. And it was just, if you get time this week and you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to check out the press conferences because they were pretty funny. It was a lot of funny sound bites and interesting clips. But next, we are going to head into the interview portion of our show. That's right. Finally, we got an interview again this week. A couple guys we've reached out to in the past. Things just haven't worked out, or there were some episodes where it was a little bit late and we didn't have a chance really to get anybody on. But yes, we have another interview this week. I know a lot of you guys love to hear from the racers, love to hear from their perspective on the track. So let's jump right into that right now. Thank you for listening to episode 10. And without further ado, here's our interview. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a while since we've had an interview on the Stire Sound, but we are back on episode 10 following the Budds Creek National. Today on the line with us is a man who scored his second points finish of the season. He got 18th in a strong Final Moto performance. He represents the Bar Aviation Yamaha team, number 565, coming all the way from the great nation of Uganda and also representing Israel. Please welcome to our show the man, the myth, the legend, Stav Orland. Welcome, man. Congratulations on your points in the second moto, dude.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My first question for you, we're going to hop right into it. Take us through your weekend a little bit. I know the first moto wasn't exactly what you wanted, but you reset your mindset. You recovered for the afternoon. How did everything go for you? And I know you were very stoked with the second moto finish, but take us through your day and how things progressed at the final round of Pro Motocross.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, the first moto was pretty much everything from what I wanted. I mean, I got off to a pretty bad start. And then they red flagged it. So I'm like, okay, I'll just reset and just reset everything and try fix my starts and just make it all clean. And that didn't go to plan exactly on the start. And I was just struggling with bike setup, and I couldn't attack down the hills in the rough bumps. It was just a big mess. So I pulled in halfway from that moto and told my mechanic, I just made it short. I pulled in, told him we need to make changes for Moto 2. And then I went back out, finished the race, obviously not fast, just where I was comfortable. And when we came back, I had the guy that actually builds our engines, Alan Brown. He helped me with the suspension changes. I actually don't know what he did. I just described what I was feeling, what I was suffering with, and he made some changes, told me check it out on the site lap for Moto 2, and that's what I did. Bike felt good on the site lap, lined up to the gate confident, tried again with my starts, but I don't know what's wrong with my starts. The whole season I've been starting from the back, and I just passed a lot of guys in the first few laps, managed to push all the way up to 18th in the first couple of laps, and then they red flagged it again. And there I was really pissed. There I came off the when they red flagged the second moto. I came back there, they had the pro guys lined up. I was cussing everyone out. I'm like, this is ridiculous. How many red flags in one day? Anyway, I put that aside. Luckily, they did the staggered start, so that calmed me down a bit because I knew my starts weren't the best. Went off the start, passed a few guys, tried to keep myself in the under the top 20. That's what I did. Battled with some of the factory guys and managed to bring home the 18th.
It was a great final moto for you there. I know part of it I was watching, and I think it was you and Hunter Yoder were really battling things out, swapping positions a little bit. You guys were really going tooth and nail for those points, and both of you guys have had really up and down years. There's been some highlights for both of you, but Yoder just coming back from being out for an illness for a while, and then you trying to end the year on a high note, trying to end the year positive with some points. Can you take me through that battle a little bit? Because it seemed like there was a few laps where you guys were just nose to tail right after each other, whether it was you ahead of him or him like right behind you, a bike length off. You guys were going at it, I felt like.
Yeah, for sure. He was, it's funny enough because Yoda is actually one guy I've never really battled with. So I don't know like how he defends and stuff. It was kind of new to me. And he has passed me a few times and I've tried to latch on to him in the previous rounds. But this time again, he said we're battling for points, and I said I really have to pass this guy. I mean, I've known Yoda since he was on Geico Honda on the 150s, and he's always super fast. So I had to like literally put everything aside and say and pretend like I don't know, like I don't care about his name, and just pretend like he's one other guy. And I caught up to him. He started fading. He passed me in the beginning, and when I started catching him again, he's really, really good at putting the bike in the position where I can't make a pass. He was, I think, one of the hardest to pass that I've in my whole career. So I think it took me about 5 laps to pass him. But I actually passed him, or like we were side by side in one section, and then he cut under me and passed me back. And I'm like, dude, I'm wasting so much energy and I want to finish in the points. And I know so many fast guys like Faulkner coming. And yeah, so I kind of regrouped, let him get a bit of air, and then tried to catch him by surprise on the uphill after the finish. And that's what I think I did. But yeah, it was not the easiest battle I've had, especially after that. You know, you waste so much energy in a battle, and then to regroup after that was quite hard. So, but yeah, happy I made it work. You know, finally the training has been paying off.
Stav, so obviously the whole outdoor year has kind of been like up and down. Like you've had good races, you've had some, ones where I feel like you definitely had more in the tank or whatnot. And then Supercross, like I noticed you first at Seattle, like in that LCQ, like the way you were hitting the whoops, I was like, this guy looks like the second coming of James Stewart right now. Like it was pretty unreal. But just like top to bottom, like I know this is like your first full season racing Supercross and outdoors. Kind of explain like how that whole experience was and how it felt making main events and scoring points in motos and just how you dealt with the highs and the lows of, the whole season.
I mean, like for the Supercross season, it was definitely something I've never experienced. I mean, the first time I've ever touched a Supercross track was in like mid-November the previous year. So I literally had maybe 2 months on a Supercross track ever before I lined up for Anaheim 1. So it was kind of a low expectation year for me. Just go and learn and try make mains, try make night shows, and just keep safe for outdoors. But I actually picked it up pretty well. And I had one day, like the first few rounds for me, those ones were really more down than up. From Anaheim 1, San Diego, uh, Anaheim 2, and Glendale. All those four, I ended up crashing out and injuring myself for the next one. But after Glendale, I took a small break. I didn't do the East-Wests, and I tried to figure out a bike setup with Enzo. And they came up and we did a lot of testing that helped me actually mainly in the whoops. And I got really comfortable with them, and that's when I came out in Seattle swinging. I mean, as everyone saw in the LCQ, I really didn't care about the whoops. I just hopped in and gassed out. So I'd say that was the defining factor on why I made the main. And then, yeah, made the main there. That was like the best feeling I've had so far. I would say it's way nicer than making points, even in the outdoors. But after that, I had a few good runs. I mean, in Denver, I was running sixth in the heat, but then I kind of forgot how to ride and dropped down to 10th and then didn't make the main there. And I didn't make a main after Seattle, but I definitely learned a lot in Supercross, learned how demanding it is, like mentally as well. And then I kind of put that aside and focused on outdoors because that's where I was, supposed to shine. And again, the first, I think, 4 or 5 races in outdoors were just terrible. I mean, Fox, I didn't make it. Hangtown, I didn't make it. Got landed on in the LCQ. Thunder Valley, I think I just made it. Like the first few rounds were just bad for me. And then I went into a mental reset, like kind of just took a breather. I said, I'm here for a reason. You need to know why you're here. Like you don't come all the way here and not make these things. And then we went to Southwick, and I already like the sand. And that day I just felt really good. Qualified decent, went for Moto 1 around everyone on the start that crashed. Was running top 15s there for a while. I mean, pretty much the whole moto, keeping really good factory guys behind me. And then I kind of dropped off the last 2 laps back to 21st. That's where I scored the first point on outdoors this season. And then after that, it was kind of low again. I come off Southwick after a good performance like that, and then I'm suffering at Redbird. It was just a battle for me. It was coming towards the end, and I got a call from the team saying that they're actually not going to be continuing next year. So I decided, this is now the time to shine. Like if I need results anytime, it's now. And Dilla was okay. Ironman was terrible. Ironman, I crashed out in the first one and was riding with like a bad headache. Dilla was all right. Just bad starts coming from the back. I mean, I pushed the whole moto through, scored decent finishes there, and then obviously now Bud's Creek, which was like the ending it off on a high, which I'm happy about.
Would you say like your season as a whole, like obviously making a main event, scoring points in motos, like would you say it was like a good year for you, or were you still like looking for more, come in outdoors and stuff like that?
Personally, I was looking for more, but it was definitely a solid year for me. I mean, 9 points, that's 8 more than last year. So
For
yeah,
sure.
a really good season for me, honestly.
It's good.
I mentioned a little bit in the intro about you. You have a little bit of dual citizenship going on. You're from Uganda. You've represented that country a lot. The first Ugandan to ever qualify for a Supercross main event, of course, in the Seattle ride you talked about a little bit. But
Yep.
the Motocross of Nations is coming up in October at Ironman, and you will be competing for Team Israel, another country you've represented. I know I see the Israeli flag at several of the races. They have the flags from the different countries that competitors are representing, and the Israeli flag is usually present at all the rounds. Can you explain a little bit about your dual citizenship and not just representing Uganda, but also representing Israel and competing for both countries on a big stage like the Motocross Nations?
Yeah, for sure. To put it to a bit in shorter words, I'm half and half. So my mom is Ugandan and my dad is Israeli. And pretty much all my amateur career, I've been representing Uganda, and so like my races in South Africa, I've been representing Uganda. I did Loretta's a few years back. I was representing Uganda, and then in 2022, Israel called me, like the federation in Israel called and asked if I wanted to represent them in MX of Nations in Redbud, and I did. I mean, obviously I would agree to that. That was actually my professional debut, I would say, my first pro race. And then ever since then, like the federation in Israel and the people in Israel have been very welcoming, and because they always used to know me as Ugandan, they really didn't know I was half Israeli as well. And when they figured that out, they were super welcoming. They were super happy that I was representing, like I'm half Israeli. They wanted me to represent them more. They helped me get my license for AMA and stuff. So right now I'm actually riding under an Israeli license from like that helped me with FIM. And that's what helped me get my AMA Pro card. So here I'm representing Israel. Like my helmet has the Israeli flags, or like my custom helmet had it. And yeah, this year I'm representing Israel again in Ironman.
Sweet. So you talked a little bit about your team and stuff like that this year. I was gonna ask because I've seen you guys around the pits and whatnot of the Bar Aviation squad. You and your teammate Venter, right? So obviously you said they're no longer continuing, but kind of break down the dynamic you guys had together, just kind of tackling the outdoors. You know, each one at a time. I know Venter's mechanic pretty well, but just kind of explain like how the team was and how you felt with it, and if it was something that you felt like was helpful to you and like what you're looking for next year.
Yeah, I mean the team it was like really good, but then it was really tough sometimes because I have a lot of responsibility in that team as well, just not only being the rider. Because the team Bar Aviation is actually the company is owned by my father back
Okay.
at home. So last year, for 2 years, he said he wants me and Dalton to come here and represent our countries and the company and all that. So the team was basically, I would say, run by me. And then obviously our team manager, who is also my mechanic. It's a very small team. So I had a lot of responsibilities. We all had a lot of responsibilities. Like if I forgot something, that means like the bike wasn't 100% ready, or Brad didn't get the tools to fully make the bike ready. So it was a lot of up and downs throughout the season, but it did help me a lot, get me like a structured plan, like it really got me organized with stuff, which actually helped with my riding. So like, with my training and riding, it got me really, really focused and making sure I was on top of everything.
Stav, I know that you've been in America for a little bit now, and obviously racing around the world in your homeland of Uganda, racing in South Africa. But one question I really wanted to ask you is about the culture here in America. I know going up to you in the pits and the few times we've talked, it seems like you really enjoyed your stay here and been loving racing in America. But I kind of wanted to get to know what are your favorite parts about living and racing here in America? And then what are some of the things that you aren't such a big fan of compared to being back at home?
I mean, I think every foreign rider can agree with me. The number one thing here, like with the racing scene and stuff, is like there's always tracks wherever you go. There's always a big moto community somewhere. And at the races, the fans like at Redbud, and they're just, it's so nice to see how big motocross is here. It's almost like back home, it's literally just some random sport that you have on like the weekend. But here it's like it's such a big series. People actually watch it. People bet on it. People put money on it, and it was just really cool to see how unified it is here. Like everyone loves motocross here, which was really cool to experience. Like they knew I was also not from here, but because I was not from here, they didn't like treat me in some other way. They were more happy to see that there's actually foreigners riding here as well. And with that being said, like I really love the atmosphere, the vibe. The only thing that I struggled with here, which again I think all the other foreign riders can agree with, was kind of the food situation. Like a lot of stuff here is processed and stuff, which was not like now I've kind of got used to it. Like I now know my way around stuff. But like last year it was really tough when we're on the road and like what to buy, what to eat, what's good, what's not good.
I've
So that
definitely
was
heard that from a few different people of the food. I know I was talking to Valentin Guillot at High Point, and he was kind of poking fun of it as mechanic. He had some kind of cup of noodles or whatever, and Guillot was like, "Man, that's really dry." He's like, "I've been to Italy." He's like, "I know what good noodles are," and he was just kind of poking fun at him a little bit. But I've definitely
yeah.
heard that it's a big obstacle for you guys.
Yeah, no, it's like it's really not that bad if you know if you kind of have like what you know like your structured race meals and stuff, then you can kind of pick certain groceries and then make it yourself. Like we would cook noodles and like a lot of our meals ourselves, but like when there's nothing or like when we're traveling through driving from California to Ironman and we couldn't waste too much time to eat while we're driving. That was really the hard part. Like, you know, we have to get something quick, something easy. And yeah, that was quite tough for us.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. 18th place in the final moto of the season at Budds Creek. He scored 9 points this year, as he mentioned, a big improvement. Well, man, it was great to have you here in America. It was great to have the Bar Aviation Yamaha team as well. Dalton Venner, shout out to him, your teammate. He scored his first points here in America on Saturday as well. He was 20th in the final moto. So a tremendous way for you guys to end for the team. Hopefully we can see you back next year or at least sometime down the road in the future. Stav Orland, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the time, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit, man.
Thank you for having me on here. It was a pleasure.
Welcome back to the Stire Sound. That was Stav Orland from the Bar Aviation Yamaha team. Thank you, Stav, for the time this week. A great finish to end his year, 18th in Moto 2, putting points on the board. And obviously, he's racing for his future a little bit. Hopefully, we see him racing here in America. Jack, I'm going to toss things over to you as we get to our final topic of the day. And our final topic, the MXGP of Netherlands. They raced in Arnhem this weekend, and it was a sandy track. The Dutch crowd were out in full force. And from what I heard, I haven't been able to catch the action. We're recording this Tuesday evening. My internet has been out since Sunday night. I've not been able to watch MXGP, unfortunately. But Jack was able to catch some of the action and is here to run it down for us. It was a dominant display from Jeffrey Hurlings. 1-1 finishes from the bullet. Romain Fevre keeping the red plate. Koonin a great 2-2 weekend. But Jack, take us through the 450 class proceedings. Hurlings gets another win in the sand and another win in front of his home country.
Yeah, so Hurlings is back. I mean, it's kind of a bummer. He's not going to be racing MX of Nations, right? So that happens. Feb, I believe, extends his points lead to 31 points. I don't even know what place he got. I think he got second. I don't even know.
Fevre
Um,
3-8 for fifth overall, according to my results. I
okay.
think he
What
lost
did Kuna get?
Koonin went 2-2 for second. I think he lost a few points, but he gained so many from Udavala that it really didn't hurt him much.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. I remember his last race that he lost all the points. I didn't even really watch the highlights. I was just trying to remember what Feb got. I know he had a good moto, but I forgot he had a bad second moto. But yeah, so I honestly don't think Feb throws this title away. That was the last stand round of the season, I believe. Then we go way overseas, and then it's what I think it's like China, Australia, and then another place as well. I don't know.
Turkey, yeah. It's
Turkey,
Turkey
Turkey.
and not this weekend, but next weekend. And then, yes, China, Australia, 3 flyaway rounds to end the year. So lots of travel for those guys.
Yes, and that's where I think Feb will be a little bit more seasoned and a little bit better. I think Feb will be Feb just has to maintain, right? Feb doesn't have to do anything crazy. It's not like it was that 9-point gap it was early in the season. Koonin kind of threw it away, and that's kind of what he didn't need to do. I mean, if Feb does throw it away, that sucks. But as long as Feb, I think, stays inside the top, stays within 3 to 5 positions of where Koonin is, he ain't gonna lose the title. I think Hurlings is riding well. I think he'll be good at these last couple of rounds. I think, and then obviously Geisher coming back as well throws some more wrenches into the pot. But I think with the way the Sweden round went for Feb and gaining all those points on Koonin, it kind of sealed the deal for him, and that's good. I think Feb's going to win the title, and that's great. 250 class though, definitely got a whole lot more interesting. 9 points now separate DeWolf and Langenfelder. DeWolf really good in the sand, had a really good round. Langenfelder did not have a good round. He lost a lot of points in the sand, but Langenfelder is really good at the hard pack stuff. I think Langenfelder will, if DeWolf can figure out the hard pack stuff and continue to gain points on Langenfelder, but I think Langenfelder will be a lot better these last couple rounds on the hard pack stuff. So I think Langenfelder might be able to keep it, but DeWolf could have one of those rounds where he just drops hammer and gains, heck, he could gain up to, I want to say, 6 points a round. So if he goes 1-1, so if he has one of those rounds and Langenfelder just isn't on his game, it could switch in the snap of a finger. So it'll be interesting. I'm interested to see how these last 3 rounds go in the GPs. With everybody kind of coming back, getting ready for destinations, it makes it more fun and interesting. It's almost like, it's kind of weird how it works. Like these guys coming back for these last 3 rounds to get ready for designations. It's almost like designations is their SMX. It's kind of funny, but the GP's definitely we're bringing some good action this weekend, and the 250 class over there, which I thought was long gone, is now a title fight. So it's just crazy how fast things change over there, and I think it's something where if it was more easily streamed over here in the U.S., I think people would actually watch it on our side of the pond.
It's kind of hilarious how things completely flipped around, because before Sweden, Fevre and Koonin was the tight points race. It was like 10 points. And then Langenfelder had probably 45, 50 over DeWolf. And now you look and it's like 10 to 15 in the MX2 class, and Fevre has a 30-point lead in the GP class. So it's going to be crazy to watch. We've been mentioning throughout this podcast and throughout our coverage of MXGP how we keep waiting and waiting and waiting for Kai DeWolf from 2024 to really continue to be there consistently. He finally, of course, we know he's great on the sand. He looked really good at Lommel. Another victory, but when Langenfelder goes 8-5, a huge gain in points for DeWolf. And not just the motos, if he wins, if he keeps performing well in the qualifying races as well, that could help him and his case to win the title. I'll quickly run down the top of the results in each class. Starting with MX2, we mentioned DeWolf 1-1, Andrea Adamo 3-3 for second overall, then Sasha Koonin rounding out the podium with a 2-4. Camden McClellan got second in the final moto, but a fifth in Moto 1 leaves him fourth overall. Then Liam Everts and Langenfelder, Jax Boyge and Ferez. Eighth overall, not a bad showing from him. Looking down the list, pretty status quo from there. Poor Carlos Rezulis, man, had a nasty crash. I think it was in the qualifying race or in practice or something. Then the 450 class, as I mentioned, Hurlings 1-1, Koonin 2-2, the Hoff P3 overall. He's a machine. 4-4 for third. Consistent day paid off for Glenn Coldenhoff. Geiser was fourth overall, then Fevre. Then you had, going on down the list, poor Andrea Bonacorsi, 5-5 for sixth. Never a great feeling. Then Bogers, so all 3 Fanics in the top 7. Great round for them. Maxime Renault, Pauls Jonas, Yago Geertz rounding out the top 10. Kevin Bruman, a 9th in Moto 1. That's impressive. Shout out to Kevin Bruman, privateer Husqvarna guy. He's usually like a 20th place guy or so, but hey man, 9th place in first moto. Great result for him. Unfortunately, we don't have any podium predictions or any random position spots to bring you this week. MXGP is off They have a week before they start their flyway rounds. Their next race is next weekend in Turkey. And of course, next weekend, the SMX playoffs begin. ZMAX Dragway, Concord, North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. Should be interesting to watch. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, we will be talking a lot about the playoff seeding next week, and we will be talking about who will be racing the LCQs, and then give our previews and what we expect for the SMX playoffs. And then maybe we'll look back in a few weeks and be like, either, man, we were right, or boy, we were terribly wrong. So we'll see what happens. But a lot of stuff I wanted to unpack and really talk about from Budds Creek, my observations. Since Jack unfortunately wasn't able to be there, the tides kind of turned a little bit. I'm usually the one at home looking from afar, and Jack has the inside scoop, but it was the other way around. But he was back. Fun episode. Thank you once again to Stav Orland for the interview and for taking time to chat with us. It's always great to talk to him. He's got a great personality, always fun to chat with. Any final thoughts from you, Jack, before we conclude episode number 10?
No, I'm just excited to see how these SMX playoffs shake up and who's all in the LCQ. I know there's going to be a lot of spots in that 250 class. So I'm excited to see how it goes. And yeah, let's see you guys next weekend.
Should be fun. I will also mention next week we may finally unveil our prediction point system. I've been wanting to formulate a point system for our predictions so that way we're not just, it's fun to predict and to simply predict, but to have a little bit of like points on the line and have bragging rights to see who wins between Jack and I think would be really cool. And I'm hoping to have that all ready to go for next week. So that's something to look forward to as well as we talk SMX playoffs and then the final 3 rounds of MXGP. But for Jack, Noel, I am Trey Stire. Hard to believe that we're already in double-digit number of episodes, but this has been episode number 10 of the Stire Sound. Thank you all for listening, and the Stire Sound is fading out.
He was sitting in seat 38C. You know where seat 38C is? It's right next to the airplane outhouse. Do you know what the #1 piece of wrestling talent had for lunch today? It was a little stale sandwich stuffed in a brown paper bag. Now, I'd like to say that's what made me sick, but that's not the case. It's seeing Bret Hart whine and cry every time he gets on the WWF TV, and it makes me violently ill to my stomach. If he ain't whining, he's quitting. If he ain't quitting, he's doing something else. It ain't nothing good, and it just makes me sick.
Well, we will hear
No, shut up. I'd like to tell you that I was indeed throwing up everywhere, but it goes a little beyond that.
All right.
Way beyond. The referee would say, I quit. I submit. I've had too much. There ain't nobody. There ain't nobody in wrestling who can make me quit. And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so.